In the heart of a city that never sleeps, shadows hide secrets, and justice often wears a mask. This is the story of Detective Sarah Collins, a seasoned investigator haunted by her past. She has seen the worst humanity has to offer, but nothing could prepare her for the case that would change her life forever. As the sun sets behind the skyline, darkness creeps in, bringing with it whispers of those who walk the line between right and wrong. Sarah's phone buzzes on her desk, breaking the silence of her thoughts. It's a call she never expected to receive. It was a typical Tuesday evening when Sarah received the call that would change everything. "Detective Collins," said the voice on the other end, crackling with urgency. "We have a body in Riverside Park. You need to get here, now." Her heart raced as she grabbed her coat and badge, racing through the streets filled with flashing lights and sirens. Memories flooded her mind, cases unsolved, lives lost. But this time felt different. This time felt personal. Upon arriving at the park, she was greeted by Officer Jenkins, who gestured toward a cluster of officers cordoning off an area. "Detective, over here." "What do we know?" she asked, scanning the scene. "Victims Mark Thompson, a journalist. Looks like he was working on something big." Sarah knelt beside the body, examining the scene carefully. A notebook lay beside him, its pages fluttering in the wind. It contained notes on a story he was investigating. A story that could shake the city to its core. The park was eerily quiet, except for distant sounds of traffic and murmurs from onlookers gathered at a safe distance. Sarah stood up and glanced around, taking in every detail: the broken branches, a discarded cigarette butt, and footprints leading away from the scene. "Let's secure this area," she instructed Jenkins. "I want every inch of this park searched for evidence." As they canvassed nearby residents, Sarah approached an elderly woman walking her dog. "Did you see anything unusual last night?" The woman squinted into the distance. "I heard shouting around midnight, and then silence. It was strange." "Did you recognize any voices?" Sarah pressed. "No, but there was a car parked nearby, a dark sedan." "Thank you," Sarah said before moving on. Each piece of information felt like a puzzle piece falling into place. Determined to uncover the truth, Sarah dove into Mark's life at the precinct. She accessed his recent articles and found that he had been investigating corruption within local government, a dangerous game that had already cost him his life. "Hey, Sarah, Jake Ramirez, her partner," entered with 2 cups of coffee. "You look like you've seen a ghost." "I might as well have," she replied, sipping her coffee. Mark Thompson was onto something big, something that could expose some powerful people. "Do you think it's connected to his murder?" Jake asked. "I don't just think it is, I know it is," she said firmly. "We need to dig deeper." The two spent hours sifting through Mark's notes and articles, uncovering connections between city officials and shady dealings with organized crime. Each discovery added weight to their investigation, but also increased their sense of danger. As they pieced together Mark's findings, they discovered that he had been investigating a company called Blackstone Industries, a front for money laundering linked to several high-profile politicians. "Look at this," Jake said excitedly, pointing at a photo on Mark's desk, showing him with several city officials at an event. "These are our suspects." Sarah leaned closer to examine the photo. "We need to get in touch with his sources," she said decisively. They devised a plan to reach out to those who might have information about Mark's investigation. Journalists who had faced intimidation for their work against Blackstone Industries. One source agreed to meet them in a dimly lit cafe downtown. "Be careful," he warned as they sat down across from him. "They don't take kindly to nosy journalists or detectives poking around." As they discussed Mark's findings over coffee, Sarah felt an unsettling presence nearby, a feeling that they were being watched. Suddenly, a group of men entered the cafe, their eyes scanning the room until they landed on Sarah and Jake. "Time to go," Jake whispered urgently. They rushed outside, but found themselves cornered by two menacing figures blocking their path. "You should have stayed away from this," one growled as he stepped closer. Just as things seemed bleak, Jake shoved one attacker aside while Sarah tackled another to the ground. They fought fiercely, but were outnumbered until Officer Jenkins arrived with backup sirens blaring. "Get down!" he shouted as he drew his weapon. With their attackers apprehended and taken away by other officers, Sarah and Jake regrouped outside the cafe. "That was too close," Jake panted as they caught their breath. "We can't let fear stop us," Sarah replied resolutely. "We're on to something big here." Back at the precinct, they reviewed security footage from nearby cameras that captured their attackers' faces. One was identified as a known enforcer for Blackstone Industries. The next day brought new challenges. Anonymous threats began flooding Sarah's phone, warnings to back off or face severe consequences. "Sarah," Jake burst into her office one morning with urgency etched across his face. "You need to see this." He handed her an envelope filled with photographs showing her leaving crime scenes and meeting with informants. "They're watching us," he said grimly. "We can't let them intimidate us," Sarah replied fiercely. "We have to keep pushing forward." With renewed determination, Sarah and Jake continued their investigation into Blackstone Industries. They discovered that Mark had uncovered evidence linking city officials, including Chief Donovan, to illegal activities involving drug trafficking and extortion, a conspiracy that reached far beyond what they had imagined. "We need proof," Jake said, as they reviewed documents late one night at their office. "I have an idea," Sarah replied thoughtfully. "Let's set up an undercover operation at one of their meetings." They devised a plan where Jake would pose as an interested investor while Sarah monitored from a distance with backup ready if things went south. The night arrived for their undercover operation at an upscale restaurant where Blackstone executives were rumored to meet for clandestine discussions. Jake adjusted his tie nervously as he approached the table where several men sat discussing business deals over drinks. "Gentlemen," he introduced himself smoothly, despite his racing heart. Meanwhile, Sarah watched from across the room through discreet surveillance equipment set up by tech specialists at the precinct. As Jake engaged them in conversation about investments, he discreetly recorded their discussions about illicit activities, money laundering schemes, and threats against anyone who dared oppose them. Suddenly, one executive's phone buzzed loudly, a message alert that sent chills down Sarah's spine as she recognized Chief Donovan's name, mentioned in their conversation about silencing dissenters permanently. After successfully gathering evidence from the meeting, Jake returned exhilarated but cautious about what lay ahead. "We have enough evidence now. We can take this straight to internal affairs," he suggested eagerly. But Sarah shook her head gravely. "We can't trust anyone right now, not even IA. We need more proof before we make our move." That night brought tension-filled discussions about how deep corruption ran within their own department and who could be trusted when everything seemed tainted by greed and betrayal. In a climactic showdown at an abandoned warehouse where Blackstone conducted secret operations, Sarah confronted Chief Donovan himself. someone she once admired deeply during her early days on the force. "Well," she demanded, as they faced off among crates filled with illegal goods, "you were supposed to protect this city." Donovan smirked coldly as shadows danced across his face under flickering lights. "Power is everything, Sarah. You should have known better than to dig too deep." A fierce struggle ensued as Donovan lunged at her. Adrenaline surged through Sarah's veins as she fought back fiercely, determined not only for herself but for all those who had suffered under Donovan's reign of corruption. Just when it seemed like Donovan would overpower her, Jake burst through another entrance with backup officers right behind him, their presence turning the tide against Donovan's henchmen who were closing in fast. With Donovan apprehended and chaos subsiding after a fierce battle against corruption within their own ranks, the officers finally took control over Blackstone's operations once and for all. With Donovan arrested and evidence collected against Blackstone Industries leading towards multiple indictments, the city began healing from years spent under corrupt leadership's thumb. But not without losses felt deeply by everyone involved, including Mark Thompson, whose sacrifice led them here today. Sarah stood at Mark's memorial service, days later, reflecting on everything lost along this arduous journey. Each candle lit representing lives forever changed by greed-driven crimes committed against innocent people, seeking truth amidst darkness surrounding them all along. Though shadows still lingered in her heart, she knew that she would continue fighting for justice, for Mark, for herself, and all those who couldn't speak up against injustices faced daily within society itself. In a world where darkness often prevails, one detective's unwavering resolve shines through. This is not just a story about crime, it's about courage. The relentless pursuit towards truth, regardless how daunting obstacles may seem along the way, forward towards brighter future ahead. As long as there are shadows lurking in corners of society, there will always be those willing to step into light, to seek justice no matter what cost may come. And so, Detective Sarah Collins continues her journey, a beacon of hope amidst chaos, a reminder that even in darkest times, truth will always find its way back into light.